You're watching Global Pulse, and what we're about to tell you isn't a movie plot. It's a real-world nightmare unfolding between two nuclear powers. Just after midnight, on the night of May 6th, the skies over South Asia lit up. Explosions rocked Pakistani towns. Sirens screamed through the night. Indian fighter jets, operating under radio silence, launched what they call a surgical counter-terror strike deep inside Pakistani territory. Let's be clear, this wasn't along the usual flashpoint in disputed Kashmir. This time, the missiles landed in Punjab, the heartland of Pakistan. Residential areas, religious schools, campuses labeled as terrorist strongholds by Indian intelligence. According to the Indian military, 9 high-value targets were hit. They say these were launch pads for a terror network that killed 26 Indian civilians 2 weeks ago in a bombing at a tourist site. But for those on the ground in Pakistan, the only thing they saw was fire and death. Videos from the city of Bahawalpur show buildings reduced to rubble. One child was reportedly pulled from debris, lifeless. Local hospitals declared a state of emergency. Religious sites destroyed. And then, just minutes later, came the response. Pakistani radar picked up incoming jets. Anti-air systems were activated. In a matter of moments, 2 Indian aircraft were reportedly downed. Islamabad confirmed it fired short-range missiles at military installations inside Indian Kashmir and hit them. An Indian army post gone. A military command center burning. Border villages shaking from shell fire. By sunrise, both governments confirmed it. Direct military engagement had taken place between India and Pakistan. The first such air-to-ground combat operation across undisputed borders since 1971. This was no border patrol gone wrong, no ambiguous skirmish. This was war, unofficial, unannounced, but undeniably real. The world watched in disbelief. And here's why this moment is terrifying. Both nations have nuclear arsenals. Together, over 300 warheads. One wrong signal. One misread radar. One ambitious colonel acting without clearance. That's all it takes to start something that can't be undone. And yet, no one blinked. No formal declarations. No apologies. No restraint. Instead, both sides doubled down. India says it was justice. Pakistan calls it naked aggression. And now, the region teeters on the edge of something far more dangerous. But how do we get here? Why now? And why did India choose this exact moment to strike? To understand that, we have to rewind. Let's go back to April. In the scenic valley of Pahalgam, Indian and foreign tourists were boarding buses after visiting a sacred Hindu shrine. Then, in an instant, a coordinated explosion turned that scene into a massacre. 26 people dead, among them children, 1 foreign national. The attack was claimed by a terror group operating in Indian-administered Kashmir. But Indian intelligence traced the roots further to a well-known training network based in Pakistan. Specifically, a group called Lashkar-e-Taiba, officially banned, but believed to operate freely in parts of Punjab under loose surveillance. Within 24 hours, India pointed the finger. Officials demanded Islamabad take action, arrest the leaders, shut down the camps, extradite the planners. What did Pakistan do? They denied, dismissed the intel, and warned India not to act impulsively. That silence, that perceived indifference is what lit the fuse. In New Delhi, outrage erupted. Politicians rallied. News channels demanded revenge. And for the Indian Prime Minister, up for re-election next year, inaction was political suicide. So the stage was set. Troop deployments surged along the border. Surveillance flights increased. Satellite imagery showed camps being marked. War rooms were opened. Orders were prepared. Then came the green light. Indian officials insist they chose their targets carefully, that they gave a narrow corridor to prevent civilian casualties. But reality doesn't follow maps. When explosions land in people's homes, when funerals are held for children, the line between counterterrorism and war vanishes. And for Pakistan, it was simple. Sovereignty had been violated. Period. They saw it not as self-defense, but as a deliberate breach of national dignity. And in a nation where the military holds immense sway, Retaliation was never questioned. It was a duty. Now, both countries are caught in a dangerous spiral. Neither wants to appear weak. Neither can afford to back down first. And both know the next move could determine whether this was a one-night clash or the beginning of a much darker chapter. And we haven't even touched on the global reaction yet. Because while missiles flew across South Asia, the world's superpowers scrambled behind closed doors. As the dust settled and sirens faded, world leaders picked up the phone. Because when India and Pakistan trade missiles, no one sleeps easy. Not in Washington, not in Beijing, not in Moscow. And each one had a different nightmare in mind. The United Nations was first to speak out, calling for immediate restraint. The Secretary General called it a dangerous breach of regional stability and warned both sides that the world cannot afford a war between two nuclear states. But let's be honest, calls for peace are cheap when missiles have already flown. So who's really backing who? Let's start with the United States. Officially, the White House urged maximum restraint. But behind the scenes, U.S. intelligence had already been briefed days before the strike. They knew something was coming. And while Washington didn't bless the move, they didn't condemn it either. Why? Because over the past decade, the U.S. has grown closer to India, economically, militarily, and politically as a counterweight to China. India, in Washington's eyes, is a rising democratic ally, a strategic partner, and frankly, a key player in the Indo-Pacific chessboard. So when India says we're hitting terrorists, the U.S. listens, even if those hits cross a border. Now what about China? This is where it gets tense. China is Pakistan's strongest ally, with billions invested in the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Beijing didn't wait. Its foreign ministry issued a sharp statement blaming external provocations and warning against any further destabilization of South Asia. In diplomatic speak, that's code for India, we're watching. Beijing doesn't want a war, not when its own borders sit just miles away. But if Pakistan calls, China won't ignore it, especially if Chinese investments or workers are endangered. Now to Russia, historically close to India. But recently, Moscow's been courting Pakistan too, selling arms, holding joint drills. So when asked to comment, the Kremlin walked a fine line. They condemned terrorism, urged dialogue, and offered mediation. Russia doesn't want to choose sides. What it wants is stability and arms contracts on both ends. Meanwhile, in Europe, France, the UK, the EU, the message was unified: stop this now. But none of them have real leverage. And while the global powers talk peace, back on the ground, both armies are still mobilizing. So let's talk about what comes next. Because even if missiles stop flying tonight, the shockwaves have only just begun. This conflict isn't just military. It's economic, political, and deeply personal. Let's start with the economies. India's stock market took a hit. Defense contractors surged, while airlines, tourism, and retail dipped. Investors hate uncertainty, and war is the ultimate red flag. But in Pakistan, the damage is deeper. Its economy is fragile. Inflation is high. Foreign reserves are thin. And now, a military conflict threatens to pull resources away from basic services. Worse, India just suspended a critical water-sharing agreement that channels water from the Indus River system to Pakistan. That's not just strategic. That's survival. If India plays the water card long-term, Pakistan faces an existential crisis. Farming, power, and drinking water would all be affected. This is where we leave the realm of skirmishes and enter the realm of structural war. And then, there's the nuclear question. No, neither country wants a nuclear exchange. The weapons exist to deter war, not start one. But when tensions run this high and communication lines are fragile, accidents can escalate fast. A radar blip, a misread maneuver, a political leader trying to save face. That's why the world is panicking quietly. That's why diplomatic hotlines are burning. Because this isn't a game, and both sides are walking a line too thin to see. There's also a psychological cost. In Kashmir, families are evacuating again. Children are sleeping in underground shelters. Schools are shut. Markets are closed. People who've lived their whole lives under the threat of war are now watching it inch closer again. And globally, the balance is shifting. Countries are reassessing alliances. Militaries are updating threat maps. Economists are rewriting forecasts. The next days and hours will decide whether this crisis becomes a footnote or a flashpoint that changes the course of a region. So now we ask you, was India justified in striking back after the terror attack? Did Pakistan overreact or simply defend its sovereignty? Should global powers step in and impose red lines, or let the region solve its own wars? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that subscribe button to stay with Global Pulse as this story unfolds.